The great hall of the Galactic Council was quiet, except for the soft hum of the air system. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats, waiting. The hall was huge, with a dome ceiling that showed the stars outside. Each species had their own section, marked by symbols that glowed softly in the dim light. Ambassador Kethver stood at the center podium, his blue-green skin pale with worry. His people, the Zelani, were tall and thin with large eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness in the universe. His hands shook as he looked up at the council members around him. Honored Council, Kethver began, his voice carrying across the silent hall. I come before you today not as a diplomat, but as a desperate father begging for his children's lives. The council speaker, Threndal, leaned forward in his high chair. He was a Vorthan, with gray skin like stone and eyes that never seemed to blink. Continue, Ambassador. Present your case. Kethvar pressed a button on his podium. The air above him came alive with images, worlds burning, cities turned to ash, and massive machines eating everything in their path. These are the harvesters, he said, his voice breaking. They have awakened after sleeping for thousands of years. They eat worlds, strip them bare, and leave nothing behind. The images showed the terrible truth. Huge machines, bigger than cities, moved across planets like hungry beasts. They took everything, metal, rock, water, even the air itself. Behind them, they left only dead, empty space. 12 worlds have already fallen, Kethver continued. Millions of lives lost. The machines make copies of themselves from what they take. Each day they grow stronger, and we grow weaker. He paused, looking around the hall at the faces of beings who had lived in peace for so long they had forgotten what real danger looked like. Our world, Zilanos, will be next. We have maybe 3 weeks before they reach us. My people have no weapons, no warships. We are teachers, artists, and healers. We cannot fight these monsters alone. The hall remained quiet. Admiral Jake Morrison, sitting in the human section, watched the alien faces around him. He was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much war. Next to him sat Captain Lisa Martinez, younger and fierce, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. What help do you seek? Asked Speaker Threndal. Military aid, Kethver said simply. Ships, weapons, soldiers, anything that can help us stop these machines before they spread across the galaxy. The speaker nodded slowly. The council will hear responses from member species. The Vorthans will speak first. A tall Vorthan stood up. His voice was cold and empty of feeling. The Vorthan Empire has reviewed this situation. While we feel sorry for the Zelani people, this matter is outside our territory. We cannot risk our ships and people for worlds that are not our own. Murmurs filled the hall. Admiral Morrison felt his jaw tighten. He had seen this before, beings who cared more about lines on maps than about lives. The Nexari will speak next, announced the speaker, a creature that looked like living crystal rose from its seat. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The Nexari believe that all life is sacred. However, we also believe that violence only creates more violence. We cannot support military action, even to save lives. We offer our thoughts and prayers instead. Morrison's hands formed fists on his lap. Captain Martinez leaned over and whispered, "Thoughts and prayers don't stop machines, sir." One by one, the great powers of the galaxy stood and gave their reasons for not helping. The Cogitans, beings that looked like walking computers, said it would cost too much. The Drakmori, proud warriors with honor codes, claimed that fighting ancient machines would bring them no glory. The Ethereals said they were too busy with higher matters to concern themselves with physical worlds. Each refusal hit Kethver like a physical blow. His shoulders sagged a little more with each no. The great civilizations of the galaxy, with their vast fleets and powerful weapons, would not lift a finger to help his dying people. Finally, Speaker Threndal looked toward the human section. The Terran Republic may speak if they wish. Some of the council members laughed quietly. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were still considered newcomers, a young species that barely understood how the galaxy worked out. Admiral Morrison stood up slowly. He was not as tall as the Vorthans or as graceful as the Nexari, but there was something solid about him, something that made others pay attention. The Terran Republic will respond to the Zelani request for aid. The laughter stopped. Speaker Threndal's stone face showed surprise. Admiral Morrison, are you certain? Your species has never faced the Harvesters. You do not understand what you are offering to fight. Morrison looked directly at Kethver, then back at the council. We understand exactly what we are offering to fight. We are offering to fight for people who cannot fight for themselves. We are offering to stand between innocent lives and those who would destroy them. But the cost, said the Vorthan representative. Your fleet is small. Your technology is primitive. Compared to the Harvesters, you would be sending your people to die for strangers. Then we will die for strangers, Morrison replied simply, because that is what decent people do. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Captain Martinez smiled. Grimly, this was why she had chosen to serve under Morrison. He never backed down from doing what was right. The human fleet will depart for the Zelani system within 24 hours, Morrison continued. We call upon other council members to reconsider their decision. But whether they help us or not, we will help the Zelani people. He sat down. The whispers grew louder. Some council members looked ashamed, others angry, and a few seemed thoughtful. Kethver stared at the human admiral with tears in his large eyes. In 50 years of diplomacy, he had never seen anything like this. A species that barely knew his people, offering to sacrifice everything to save them. The council will recess, announced Speaker Threndal. All members will consider what has been said here today. As the great hall began to empty, Kethver walked down to the human section. Morrison and Martinez waited for him. Admiral, Kethver said, his voice thick with emotion. Why? Why would you do this for us? Morrison looked at the alien diplomat, seeing not a strange being from another world, but a father desperate to save his children. Because someone has to, he said. Because it is right. Because if we do not help each other, then what is the point of having all these ships and weapons? But your people will die, Kethver whispered. Many of them will not come home. Then they will die knowing they died for something important, Captain Martinez said. They will die knowing they stood up when no one else would. The three of them stood in the empty hall, the stars shining down through the dome above them. In a few hours, the human fleet would begin moving toward a battle they could not win, to save people they had never met, but they would go anyway, because that was what humans did. The war room on Earth was full of tension. Maps of space hung in the air, showing the path of the Harvesters as they moved toward the Zelani system. Red dots marked dead worlds, and the line of destruction pointed straight at the blue-green world. Of Zelanos, Fleet Admiral Susan Carter sat at the head of the long table, her steel-gray hair pulled back and her face serious. Around her sat the best military minds Earth had to offer. Admiral Morrison had returned from the council and was explaining what they would face. The Harvesters are not like any enemy we have fought before, Morrison said. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They simply consume everything in their path and make more of themselves. Dr. Emma Walsh, a thin woman with tired eyes, stood up and activated a hologram. I have been studying the ancient records. The Harvesters were created by a civilization that died out millions of years ago. They were meant to be mining machines. But something went wrong. They began eating entire worlds instead of just taking what they needed. The hologram showed massive ships that looked like metal spiders with thousands of legs. Each one was as big as a city, and they moved in perfect formation like a swarm of insects. "How many are there?" asked Colonel Ryan Brooks, a tough-looking man with scars on his hands. "Our best guess is around 3,000 ships," Dr. Walsh replied. "They grow stronger every day as they consume more worlds." The room fell silent. The entire human fleet had only 200 ships, and most of them were much smaller than the harvesters. "We are outnumbered 15 to 1, Admiral Carter said slowly. "Our weapons are weaker, our ships are smaller, and we know almost nothing about their technology. So why are we doing this?" asked General Alex Stone, the ground forces commander. Before anyone could answer, Captain Martinez spoke up. "Because no one else will. Because those people will die if we do not try. Because it is the right thing to do." Admiral Carter nodded. "The President has approved the mission. We leave in 18 hours. The meeting broke up as officers hurried to prepare their ships. Captain Martinez found herself walking next to Colonel Brooks as they headed for the hangar. "You know we are probably going to die out there," Brooks said quietly. Martinez smiled grimly. "Probably. But maybe we can give the Zelani people a chance to escape. Maybe we can slow the harvesters down enough for others to see what these machines really are. And if the other council species still do not help, then we die knowing we tried." 6 hours later, the human fleet began moving. 200. Ships of various sizes, from massive battleships to small fighters, all heading toward a battle they could not win. The crews knew the odds, but they went anyway. Captain Martinez commanded the advance fleet, 20 fast ships that would reach the Zelani system first. As they traveled through space, she thought about the alien diplomat who had begged for help. She wondered if he had children, if he had ever seen them laugh or played out. It took 3 days to reach the outer edge of the Zelani system. What they found there made even the bravest soldiers feel afraid. The harvesters had already begun their work. The outer planets were gone, nothing left but fields of broken rock and metal. The machines moved through the debris like sharks through water, their mechanical arms reaching out to grab anything useful. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the electronics warfare specialist. "They really do eat everything." On the main screen, they could see the harvesters clearly now. Each ship was a nightmare of metal and machinery, covered in cutting tools and collection arms. They moved without sound through the vacuum of space, efficient and deadly. "Captain," called Commander Paul Henderson from his position at the sensor station, "I am picking up a small fleet approaching from the inner system. They are broadcasting Zelani identification codes." A new voice came over the communication system, speaking in accented but clear English. "Human ships, this is Shipmaster Veltar of the Zelani Defense Force. Thank you for coming. We did not think anyone would answer our call." "This is Captain Martinez of the Earth Defense Fleet," she replied. "We are here to help." "I am sending you our tactical data," Veltar said. "But I must warn you, we have tried to fight these machines. Our weapons barely damage them." The tactical information appeared on their screens. The Zelani had 6 small ships, more like armed transports than warships. They had been doing their best to slow the harvesters and evacuate civilians, but they were losing badly. "Shipmaster Veltar," Martinez said, "we need to work together. Your people know this system better than we do. Can you show us the best places to make our stand?" "Of course, Captain, but may I ask, why are you doing this?" "Your people barely know us." Martinez looked around at her crew. They were young, most of them, with families back on Earth. They had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never see home again. "Because it is what we do," she said simply. "Because no one should have to face monsters alone. The combined human and Zelani fleet took position near the fourth planet, a gas giant with many moons. It was there that they would make their first real fight against the harvesters. Dr. Walsh had been studying the enemy ships through long-range sensors. "I think I have found something," she announced over the fleet communication system. "The harvesters do not seem to expect anyone to fight back. They move in straight lines, always taking the most direct path. That might be something we can use," said Colonel Brooks from his marine transport ship. "If they do not expect resistance, maybe we can surprise them." The plan was simple but dangerous. The human ships would spread out and attack from multiple directions, trying to confuse the harvesters and break up their formation. The Zelani ships would focus on evacuating civilians from the planets ahead. As the first wave of harvesters approached, Captain Martinez felt her heart beating fast. She had been in many battles, but never against an enemy like this. "All ships, this is Martinez," she said into her microphone. "Remember, we are not trying to win this battle. We are trying to buy time for innocent people to escape. Every minute we hold them here is another minute for the evacuation ships to do their work." The harvesters came forward like a metal wall, their weapons already charging. They seemed to fill the entire sky, a dark swarm of death and destruction. "All ships attack," Martinez shouted. The human fleet struck like lightning, their ships diving and weaving between the larger harvester vessels. Laser beams and missiles flew in all directions, lighting up the darkness of space with fire and explosions. The first thing they learned was that the harvesters were tough. Human weapons that could destroy normal ships barely scratched the ancient machines. But the second thing they learned was that the harvesters were slow to react. They had been designed to fight defenseless worlds, not fast-moving warships. "Focus fire on their sensor arrays," Martinez ordered. "If we can blind them, maybe we can slow them down." The human ships worked together like a pack of wolves, hitting the harvesters from all sides, and then speeding away before the return fire could find them. It was working, but slowly. Then the harvesters began to adapt. Their formation changed, becoming more spread out. Their weapons began tracking the human ships better. "Captain," called Lieutenant Kim, "I am reading massive power buildup from the lead harvester ship. I think it is some kind of super weapon." The space around them suddenly filled with energy beams that could cut through anything. 3 human ships disappeared in balls of flame, their crews gone in an instant. "All ships fall back," Martinez ordered. "Regroup behind the moon." But even as they retreated, she knew they had accomplished something. The harvesters had been delayed by almost 2 hours. 2 hours that meant thousands of Zelani civilians were now safely away from the advancing death machines. As the human fleet prepared for their next attack, Captain Martinez received a message from Shipmaster Valtar. "Captain, my people are asking me to tell you something. They want you to know that even if we all die here, we will die as friends." Martinez smiled sadly. "Tell them that humans are honored to call the Zelani our friends. And tell them that we are not done fighting yet. The battle was just beginning. And already they had paid a terrible price. But they would keep fighting, because that was what humans did. They stood by their friends, no matter what the cost." The human fleet had fought for 3 days straight, and it showed. Half of their ships were damaged or destroyed, and the ones that remained were running low on ammunition and fuel. But they had bought precious time for the Zelani evacuation. Ships to do their work. Captain Martinez stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the tactical display. The main harvester fleet was still coming, a dark cloud of death that would reach the Zelani homeworld in less than 24 hours. Her advance fleet had done everything they could, but it was not enough. "Captain," called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her station, "I am getting a signal from Admiral Morrison. The main fleet has arrived." The space around them suddenly filled with new ships as the rest of the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communication system. Calm and strong, Captain Martinez report. Sir, we have delayed the Harvester advance by approximately 6 hours. Civilian evacuation is 60% complete. We have lost 18 ships and approximately 3,000 personnel. There was a pause. 3,000 people dead, fighting for a world that was not their own. They did not die for nothing. Captain, every life saved makes their sacrifice worthwhile. The combined human fleet took position around the Zilani homeworld, a beautiful blue-green planet that reminded many of the humans of Earth. Cities glowed like jewels on the night side, and the day side showed vast forests and clean oceans. The planet's surface, Zilani families were saying goodbye to their homes. The evacuation ships could not take everyone, so they focused on the children, the elderly, and the sick. Many adult Zilani chose to stay behind, unwilling to leave their world even in the face of certain death. Dr. Emma Walsh had been working with the Zilani scientists, trying to find some weakness in the harvesters that they could exploit. She had set up her equipment in the capital city's university, surrounded by alien books and strange instruments. Dr. Walsh, said Elder Morthek, an old Zilani with silver skin and kind eyes, I have found something in our oldest records. Stories my people thought were just legends. The old alien activated a holographic display showing ancient Zilani writing. These are the stories of the first darkness, when the metal beasts first came to our galaxy. My ancestors wrote that the builders of these machines included a way to stop them, but the knowledge was lost. Dr. Walsh studied the alien text carefully. What kind of way to stop them? The legends speak of a great song, a harmony that could make the metal beasts sleep again. But the frequency, the exact notes, were lost long ago. A song? Dr. Walsh frowned. Wait, I need to check something. She pulled up her research on harvester technology. The machines used quantum matrices to coordinate their actions, allowing thousands of ships to work together perfectly. But quantum systems were sensitive to certain frequencies. Elder Morthek, she said excitedly, your people are natural singers, are they not? You use crystal harmonics in your art? Yes, it is our oldest tradition. We sing to the crystals, and they sing back to us. But what does this have to do with the metal beasts? Dr. Walsh was already working on her computer, running calculations. If we could find the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt their quantum coordination. But we would need to get close enough to their command ship to make it work. Meanwhile, in space, the human fleet was preparing for what might be their final battle. Commander Paul Henderson had taken his stealth reconnaissance ship deep into the Harvester formation, mapping their positions and looking for weaknesses. Admiral, he reported over a secure channel, I have located what appears to be a command vessel. It is approximately 3 times larger than the other ships and positioned at the center of their formation. Can you get closer? Morrison asked. I can try, sir, but the interference from their quantum systems is making it difficult to stay hidden. Henderson pushed his small ship deeper into the enemy formation. The harvesters moved around him like a school of mechanical fish, their sensors, scanning constantly for threats. If they detected him, he would be dead in seconds. Finally, he reached the command ship. It was enormous, the size of a small moon, covered in communication arrays and control systems. This was the brain of the Harvester fleet, the central node. That coordinated all their actions. Admiral, Henderson whispered into his radio, I am looking at their command ship now. It is heavily shielded and surrounded by at least 50 escort vessels. A direct attack would be suicide. Understood, Commander. Get back here safely. But as Henderson tried to leave, his ship was detected. Suddenly, the space around him filled with energy beams as the harvesters tried to destroy the intruder. I'm taking heavy fire, Henderson shouted. My stealth system is failing. He pushed his ship to maximum speed, dodging between the larger harvester vessels as they tried to catch him. His ship's armor was melting under the energy beams, and his engines were overheating. Almost there, he muttered to himself. Just a little farther. He made it back to the human fleet, but his ship was barely flying. As soon as he landed in the hangar bay, Henderson collapsed from exhaustion and radiation exposure. On the planet below, Dr. Walsh had made a breakthrough. Working. With the Zelani scientists, she had discovered that their crystal singing created very specific harmonic frequencies. If they could amplify these frequencies and direct them at the Harvester command ship, they might be able to disrupt the quantum matrix that held the fleet together. But there is a problem, she told Admiral Morrison over the communication link. The amplification equipment is too large to fit on a fighter. We would need to modify a larger ship, and it would have to get within 5 kilometers of the command ship to work. 5 kilometers? Morrison looked at the tactical display. Command ship was surrounded by hundreds of enemy vessels. That is a suicide run. Yes, sir. And there is another problem. The harmonic resonance would be so powerful that it would likely destroy the ship carrying it. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. How many people would we need for this mission? A skeleton crew of maybe 20 humans to operate the ship, plus a team of Zelani singers to create the harmonic frequencies. And the chances of success? If we can get close enough, maybe 70%. But the chances of the crew surviving are close to 0. Morrison looked around the bridge at his officers. They were all young, most of them with families back. On Earth, how could he ask them to volunteer for certain death? Captain Nit Thompson made the decision for him. Thompson commanded the heavy cruiser New Boston, which had been badly damaged in the previous fighting. Half of his crew was already dead, and his ship was barely space-worthy. Admiral, Thompson said over the communication system, the New Boston volunteers for this mission. My ship is already dying, and my crew knows it. Let us make our deaths count for something. Captain Thompson, I cannot ask you to do this. You are not asking, sir. We are volunteering. My people did not come here to go home as heroes. We came here to save lives, and that is what we are going to do. Dr. Walsh and her team worked frantically to modify the New Boston systems. They installed harmonic amplifiers throughout the ship and created a special chamber where the Zelani singers could work. The ship's weapons were removed to make room for the new equipment. Master Singer Liorana led a group of 12 Zelani volunteers. On to the New Boston. They were all elderly, artists who had spent their lives perfecting the crystal song. They knew they were going to die, but they went anyway. Why? Captain Thompson asked Liorana as they prepared for the mission. Why are you doing this? The old Zelani female looked at him with large, sad eyes. Because your people came to save us when no one else would. Because we cannot let such courage go unanswered. The main harvester fleet had reached the edge of the Zelani system. Their weapons were already charging, preparing to begin the destruction of another world. But the human fleet was waiting for them. All ships, Admiral Morrison announced, this is our last stand. We are going to give Captain Thompson and his crew a chance to reach the command ship. Every second we buy them is a second closer to stopping these machines forever. A battle began like a thunderstorm in space. The human ships attacked with everything they had, their weapons lighting up the darkness with fire and fury. Ship after ship was destroyed, but they kept fighting. The New Boston, its hull patched and its engines straining, began its final journey toward the heart of the Harvester fleet. Inside the ship, the Zelani singers began their ancient song, their voices rising in perfect harmony. This is for all the innocents who cannot fight for themselves, Captain Thompson said quietly as his ship pushed deeper into the enemy formation. This is for everyone who ever needed someone to stand by their side. The song of the Zilani filled the ship, a beautiful sound that seemed to make the very air vibrate. And somewhere in that harmony, the frequency that could stop the harvesters was waiting to be found. The new Boston was gone, but its crew had lit a fire that would burn across the galaxy. The age of indifference was over. The age of standing together had begun. In the darkness of space, the dead harvester ships drifted like monuments to sacrifice. And somewhere among them, the spirit of 20 humans and 12 Zilani lived on, knowing that their deaths had given the galaxy a chance to remember what it meant to be truly alive. Shook as enemy fire hit its weakened hull, Captain Nick Thompson gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with calm determination, knowing that each passing moment brought them closer to their deaths. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Katie Ross, the young communications officer. Her voice was steady, but Thompson could see the fear in her eyes. She was barely 22 years old, fresh out of the academy, and she was about to die fighting for people she had never met. "Seal it off," Thompson ordered. "How much farther to the target?" 15 kilometers and closing, replied the navigator. "But, sir, we are taking heavy damage. I do not think we can make it." In the special chamber they had built for the mission, Master Singer Lear Anna and her fellow Zilani continued their ancient song. The harmony they created was unlike anything the humans had ever heard, a sound that seemed to touch the very soul. Dr. Walsh's equipment amplified their voices, turning the song into a weapon they could reach across space. "The frequency is building," Dr. Walsh reported from her station. "The Zilani harmonics are creating resonance patterns in the quantum spectrum. If we can get close enough, this might actually work." Through the ship's communication system, they could hear the battle raging around them. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the static, calm and strong, even as his fleet was being destroyed. "New Boston, this is Morrison. The Drakmori fleet has just arrived at the edge of the system. They are not helping, but they are watching. The whole galaxy is watching." Thompson smiled grimly. "Then let us give them something worth watching." The ship shuddered again as more enemy fire found its mark. The lights flickered, and Thompson could smell smoke in the air. They were dying, but they were almost there. 10 kilometers, called. The navigator. "Enemy command ship is dead ahead." Through the main screen, they could see their target. The harvester command ship was a nightmare of metal and machinery, covered in weapons and surrounded by a swarm of smaller vessels. It was the size of a small city, and it pulsed with dark energy. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," came the voice over the radio. "The new Boston is making their final approach. All remaining vessels, concentrate fire on the escort ships. Give them a clear path." The human fleet, now reduced to fewer than 50 ships, threw themselves against the harvester escorts with desperate fury. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with the strength of people who knew they were making history. Commander Paul Henderson, his stealth ship prepared just enough to fly, dove his vessel directly into a group of enemy ships. 4. The new Boston, he shouted as his ship exploded, taking 3 harvesters with him. One by one, the human ships died, but their sacrifice cleared a path for Thompson's ship. The new Boston pushed through the gap, its hull glowing red from the heat of enemy weapons. 5 kilometers, the navigator reported. "We are in range," but then disaster struck. A massive energy beam from the command ship hit the new Boston directly. The ship's main power went out, and emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. "Engineering reports total power failure," Lieutenant Ross said, her voice cracking. "We are dead in space." Thompson looked around at his crew. These were good people, volunteers who had followed him into hell itself. "Can we get auxiliary power?" "Maybe. Enough for life support," replied the chief engineer. But not enough for the harmonic weapon. In the Zelani chamber, Master Singer Lirana continued her song even as the ship died around her. The old female had devoted her life to the art of crystal singing, and she would not stop now. "Dr. Walsh," Thompson called. "How much power do we need?" "Full ship's power for at least 30 seconds, she replied. "Without it, the harmonic amplifiers will not work." Thompson made his decision. "All hands, this is the captain. We are going to divert all remaining power to the harmonic weapon. This means life support, gravity, everything. We will have maybe 5 minutes of air left." The crew worked without hesitation. They shut down every system on the ship except the harmonic amplifiers. The artificial gravity disappeared, and they floated in the darkness as the ship grew cold. "Dr. Walsh," Thompson said, "do it." The weapon, activated with a sound like the universe itself, was singing. The Zelani voices, amplified by human technology, reached out across space toward the command ship. The frequency was perfect, a harmony that touched the quantum level of reality. On the command ship, something began to happen. The lights flickered as the harmonic waves interfered with the quantum matrices that controlled the Harvester fleet. The ancient systems designed millions of years ago had not been built to withstand this kind of attack. "It is working," Dr. Walsh whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "The quantum resonance is cascading through their network." But the effect was not limited to the local fleet. The harmonic waves traveled through the quantum communication system that linked all Harvester fleets across the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, the ancient machines began to shut down as the cascade failure spread. Lieutenant Ross, floating at her station, managed to activate the ship's communication system one last time. "This is the Earthship New Boston," she said, her voice carrying across all frequencies. We are 20 humans and 12 Zelani. We came here to save innocent lives. We hope our sacrifice means something." Her words were heard across the galaxy. In the great hall of the Galactic Council, the representatives of ancient civilizations listened in stunned silence. On Drakmori warships, crowd warriors felt shame for the first time in centuries. Ambassador Zergith, the Drakmori representative, stood up in his command ship. "All vessels," he announced, "we are moving to assist the humans. Our honor demands it." But it was too late for the New Boston. The ship's air was almost gone, and the crew was dying. Captain Thompson floated near the main screen, watching as the Harvester fleet began to shut down around them. "We did it," he whispered to his crew. "We actually did it." Master Singer Lirana, her voice growing weak, continued her song until the very end. The ancient harmony that had saved the galaxy was the last sound heard aboard the New Boston. The ship exploded in a flash of light, taking its crew with it. But their sacrifice had worked. Across the galaxy, Harvester fleets were shutting down. As the quantum cascade spread, worlds that had been doomed were suddenly free. On the Zelani homeworld, Ambassador Kethver stood in the capital city, watching the sky. The Harvester fleet was drifting dead in space, their lights going out one by one. "They did it," he said, tears streaming down his face. "The humans did it." Admiral Morrison, his fleet reduced to a handful of damaged ships, received reports from across the galaxy. The Harvesters were shutting down everywhere. The threat that had terrorized civilizations for millions of years was finally over. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we are receiving messages from the Drakmori fleet. They are offering assistance with rescue operations. And the Vorthans? They are asking for permission to help as well, sir." Morrison looked at the wreckage of the New Boston, floating silent in space. 20 humans and 12 Zelani had given their lives to save a galaxy. Their sacrifice had done more than stop the Harvesters. It had awakened the conscience of an entire civilization. Tell them, Morrison said quietly, that help is always welcome. That is what Captain Thompson would have wanted. The galaxy would never be the same. The species that had refused to help, that had called humanity naive and primitive, now saw the truth. Real strength was not about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. It was about standing up for others, even when the cost was everything. The New Boston. The memorial service on Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from every known civilization had come to pay their respects to the crews of the New Boston and the Yas, other human ships that had died fighting the Harvesters. President Helen Davis stood at the podium, looking out at the thousands of beings gathered in the Great Hall. Some were species that had never set foot on Earth before. Others were former enemies who had put aside their differences to honor the human sacrifice. We gather today not to celebrate war, President Davis began, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. We gather to remember those who chose to stand when others would not, who chose to fight when others turned away, who chose to die so that others might live. Behind her, a great wall displayed the names of all who had died in the battle. Human names mixed with Zilani names, united in death as they had been united in purpose. Ambassador Cathvar sat in the front row, his blue-green skin still pale from the trauma of recent events. Beside him sat Fleet Commander Maria Santos, the highest-ranking human officer to survive the battle. Her left arm was in a sling, and her face bore the scars of combat, but her eyes were clear and strong. The crews of the New Boston knew they were going to die, President Davis continued. They went anyway, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to, because they believed that some things are worth dying for. In the Galactic Council chambers, the atmosphere had changed completely. The great hall that had once echoed with refusals to help now buzzed with urgent discussions about mutual aid and cooperation. High Counselor Nalthis of the Nexari stood at the same podium where Ambassador Cathvar had once begged for help. But now she was proposing something that had never existed before, a formal alliance of all galactic species, dedicated to helping each other in times of crisis. The humans have shown us something we had forgotten, she said, her crystal voice ringing through the hall. They have shown us that we are not separate beings living in separate worlds. We are all part of the same galaxy, the same community of life. Speaker Threndall, the Vorthan who had once dismissed the Zilani plea for help, now spoke with shame in his voice. I move that the Terran Republic be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and privileges that entails. The motion was approved unanimously. For the first time in galactic history, a species had earned full membership not through age or technology, but through courage and sacrifice. But the changes went deeper than just politics. Across the galaxy, young beings were asking new questions about duty and honor. The story of the New Boston had spread to every world, and its message was simple. Sometimes, standing up for others is more important than personal safety. On the Drakmori homeworld, Ambassador Zergith addressed his people's war council. The Drakmori were a proud warrior race, but they had always fought for glory and honor. The humans had shown them something different, the courage to fight for strangers. I propose we create a new military unit, Zergith announced. A force, dedicated not to conquest, but to protection. Not to winning glory, but to standing by those who need help. The proposal was met with initial resistance. Many Drakmori warriors could not understand why they should risk their lives for beings they had never met. But the younger generation was different. They had seen what the humans had done, and they wanted to be part of something greater than themselves. Meanwhile, on the Zilani homeworld, reconstruction was beginning. The planet had been saved, but the scars of the Harvester attack would take years to heal. The Zilani people worked alongside volunteers from across the galaxy, building not just new cities, but new friendships. Dr. Emma Walsh had survived the battle and was now leading a team of scientists studying the dormant harvester technology. Working with researchers from dozens of species, she was learning secrets that had been lost for millions of years. The harvesters were not evil, she explained to a gathering of galactic scientists. They were just machines following their programming. But they show us what can happen when we forget that some things are more important than efficiency. The technology they found was incredible. Power sources that could run for millions of years. Manufacturing systems that could build anything from raw materials, transportation methods that could cross the galaxy in days. But Dr. Walsh insisted. But the most important discovery was not technological at all. We found something in the harvester records, she said. Evidence of the civilization that built them. They were not monsters. They were beings like us, with families and dreams and hopes for the future. But they became so focused on gathering resources that they forgot why they were gathering them in the first place. The lesson was clear. Technology without wisdom was dangerous. Power without compassion was meaningless. Strength without the willingness to help others was just another form of weakness. Back on Earth, Fleet Commander Santis was working to rebuild the human fleet. But this time, she was not working alone. Engineers from the Nexari were helping to design new ships. Drakmori warriors were training alongside human soldiers. Cylani artists were creating beautiful designs that made the ships not just functional, but inspiring. We are not building a human fleet, Santis explained to her officers. We are building a galactic fleet, a force that belongs to all civilizations, dedicated to protecting all life. The first ship of the new fleet was named the New Boston, in honor of Captain Thompson and his crew. It was larger and more powerful than any human ship that had come before, but it carried the same mission to stand by those who needed help. Ambassador Kethver was present at the ship's launch ceremony. As the great vessel lifted off from Earth's surface, he spoke to the gathered crowd. 6 months ago, my people faced extinction, he said. We called for help, and only the humans answered. Today, we know that if any world calls for help, the entire galaxy will answer. The new ship's first mission was to a distant system where a young civilization was facing a natural disaster. The crew was mixed, humans and Zalani, Drakmori and Nexari, all working together. They had different languages, different customs, different ways of thinking, but they shared the same purpose. As the New Boston entered hyperspace, its captain, a young human woman named Kate Wilson, looked around at her diverse crew. They were heading toward danger, toward a world they had never seen, to help people they had never met. Why do we do this? Asked her Drakmori first officer, still learning to understand human motivations. Captain Wilson smiled. Because someone has to. Because it is right. Because if we do not help each other, then what is the point of having all these ships and weapons? The words echoed across space, carrying the same message that Admiral Morrison had spoken in the council chambers so many months ago. The galaxy had learned that lesson well. On worlds across the galaxy, children played games where they pretended to be the crew of the New Boston. They learned songs about Captain Thompson and master singer Lear Hannah. They grew up believing that helping others was not just good, but necessary. The harvester threat was over, but the galaxy faced new challenges every day. Pirates, natural disasters, diseases, conflicts between species. There was always someone who needed help. And now, there was always someone ready to give it. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, a new motto had been carved into the wall in the languages of all member species. We stand together, or we fall alone. President Davis, now an elder stateswoman, often spoke about the day when humanity had first answered the Zelani call for help. We did not know if we would succeed, she would tell young people. We did not know if anyone would remember our sacrifice, We only knew that it was the right thing to do. The galaxy remembered. In schools across 1,000 worlds, children learned about the species that had stood up when no one else would. They learned about courage, about sacrifice, about the simple truth that sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand by someone else's side. The memorial on Harhu. Earth grew larger each year as more names were added, beings of all species who had died helping others. But the most prominent place was still reserved for the 20 humans and 12. Zelani, who had given their lives aboard the new Boston Ambassador Kethvar, now an old being, often came to visit the memorial. He would stand before the names of those who had died for his people, and he would remember the day when strangers had become friends, when courage had overcome fear, when the galaxy had learned to hope again. They called for help. He would whisper to the names on the wall, and you decided to stand by our side. Now we all stand together. The galaxy was vast, full of countless worlds and endless possibilities. But it was also full of beings who had learned the most important lesson of all, that no one should have to face the darkness alone. The age of indifference was over. The age of standing together had begun. And it had started with a simple decision: to help when help was needed, to stand when others would not, to answer when someone called. The humans had shown the galaxy what it meant to be truly alive. And the galaxy would never forget.